What's up, everybody? This is Dregs One. Welcome to a very special episode of the History of the Bay podcast, recorded right here at Empire Studios in San Francisco. And today we have an amazing guest for y'all. She has been putting it down in the genre of neo soul for many years, inspiring so many people, both with her music and outside with the movements that she supported and helped support the hip hop scene here in the Bay Area, instrumental part of the culture. I'm talking about the one and only Goapele.
Hey,
What's up?
I'm happy to be here.
So happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And shout out to my man Camille for hooking this up as well.
I know we've been trying to schedule it for a little while. So
Yes.
Here.
Well, I say this a lot, but it's always true when I say it that the history of the Bay would not be complete without you. And so I'm honored that you're here and going to share some of your story with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, I mentioned we're going to just talk. It's not going to be a regular interview. We're going to talk.
So I don't have to be nervous interview mode. We're chill.
Relax. You know, I hope you don't think I'm just flattering you when I say you have a very beautiful voice.
Thank you.
Do you think that man, sometimes when I hear a really beautiful voice singing, there's healing energy?
I hope so. I feel that from other artists that I listen to, and especially when I'm going through something or I'm like, let me get my own energy right, I'll put on different artists, and I hope there's a certain vibe and feeling that's healing that's coming through my music when people hear it. So I'm happy if you could feel that.
I think there is something to that, especially when you hear it live.
Yeah.
Certain notes and melodies, there's got to be a science behind this.
Yeah. And I think there is a science to certain tones. There's even singing bowls and stuff like that are with different chakras. But I know I've, I've sung to people in hospitals or I had a friend in the community that was was dealing with cancer, and she was like, I'm going to be going into get an operation, and if you can just send me some music that I can listen to on my earphones while they're doing it, so that even though really you're put under, right? But she was like, I heard that you can still hear things and that you're still conscious in a way, and I don't want to be over hearing anything crazy. I need to stay in my zone. And I recorded her some a cappella music, some songs that I did for her that were Sweet Honey in the Rock songs. But long story short, there has been a lot of moments where contributing song, is I don't know. That's kind of my way of support. But whether it's been through illness or even through some people's transitions, out of this world. I mean, there's a reason there's music in church and every spiritual center, right? There's something about the sound and creativity, connecting to something higher.
Yeah, are you really gonna hear a beautiful voice, a beautiful note, and not have a reaction to that? You're definitely not gonna have a bad reaction.
Yeah, and it's even I don't know, what's beautiful is kind of objective. It's not I don't have a perfect voice, but it's kind of just there's there's the tone that's important to tune, but there's also just channeling a feeling and a energy, right? And I think that's one of the things that I love about music. And even when I was a kid, I loved that music could change the energy in the room. And I would, perform for my parents and their friends, you know, in our living room, but it's like it could light people up, it could make people laugh, it could, you know, bring people's spirits up or whatever. And, you know, even like going to conferences and stuff, like as a youth activist, I wasn't really comfortable speaking, but I was like, I'll sing a song, you know, as the welcome. And then there's something disarming, I think, about it.
Wow. Yeah. This conversation is making me fall in love with music all over again. So, I mean, I talk to so many artists, but it's like we don't always get so deep into like, man, why do we love this so much?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like something that connects us, even if you don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many songs I don't understand the lyrics, but it's like you feel it, you know?
For sure.
You feel it in your soul.
Well, speaking of like the science of like music, right? Like singing is it's very technical. It's a very technical skill. You have to have a technique. Did you train as a vocalist?
I did do some training. I mean, singing's interesting because, yes, you have to have technique, but because it's in our bodies, it's kind of different than like my friends that play piano or guitar or bass or drums that are like shedding and practicing for hours every day to build their discipline. Because I've attempted that before and I'm like, after a few minutes, I'm like, I can't play this piano anymore and it sounds terrible. And you kind of have to, you know, get through like getting better and better. But I think with singing, it's like, I don't know. I think it's easier in a way. Definitely like I sung with some choirs, the Oakland Youth Chorus. I've had vocal coaches before, off and on, and that's really helped just as far as like vocal warm up, how to protect your voice, how to sing in tune. I've taken music classes just to like help me as a songwriter and stuff like that. So I think all of those things really help. But I don't know, singing's a different kind of instrument because, you know, you can do it anywhere and it's like talking. So I don't know if it requires the same discipline, but I think if you want longevity and to keep growing as a musician, it's smart to hone your craft like with some support of like vocal coach.
That's what I'm getting at, because like the instrument of the voice, the throat, that's the science, the technical. Like I'm thinking of my 7th grade choir teacher who was like,
oh, so you used to sing?
Nah, they made you take it, but I
don't know. I'm like, he's about to put out an album where he's rapping and singing now. Okay, you just let the cat out the bag.
I wish I would have had the confidence to be in that choir class and be like, man, forget what y'all talking about. I'm finna do this.
It's vulnerable.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm trying to be this masculine 7th grader. Like, I don't, my teacher being like, you have a nice baritone. You know, like old white lady, like, come on, just
you were like, everybody stop looking at me.
Oh, but wow. I wish I would have been like, man, I'm finna do this, and been in that choir singing whatever hot cross buns or whatever.
Look, you can still do it. 7th grade, that's a lot of pressure though, because that's like your voice is going through all these kind of changes, and it's not a time that you really want to stand out, right? You're just trying to kind of fit in.
Exactly.
But look, you could have been a kid superstar vocalist.
I know. I have a lot of regrets like that, but it's never too late.
It's never too late. Yeah. But what I will say to what you're saying about practicing and stuff like that, singing is, I'm going to say it's not just like the getting on a bike type of thing, right? So you probably have this natural talent because you already use your voice. But singing, I imagine, different from rapping would be like yes, you would want to start doing the warm-ups and training and
Yeah,
stuff just
yeah,
to,
yeah.
because it's like internal muscles,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
And to like kind of get it back to
Right.
having vocal control.
Well, what's something I am very good at is mic control. So on a stage, a lot of people, a lot of rappers, they have to have their lyrics
Yeah.
because they don't know how to hold the mic, how to
Yeah.
project into the mic.
Covering it,
Yeah,
feeding
yeah,
back.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I thought about like, yeah, why don't I just go back to City College and take a singing class or something just to do
No,
it.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I think, you know, and then like singing with people, it's like tuning your ear for
Yeah.
harmonies.
Yeah.
And I mean, with all the studio access you have, I would say try it out. You have nothing to lose now.
I
Do
know.
some hooks on your
I
songs.
might
You know what I'm
just
saying?
go
Like,
back there and just start today.
right?
You mentioned songwriting too, and I was gonna ask, do you write most of your own?
Yep. I write like I love songwriting, and I love that it allows you to tell a story, and like I like expressing myself. Like sometimes it's easier than talking. I will say I'm not like a fast songwriter. I feel like people nowadays, like some folks will get in the studio and they're like, I'm about to knock out a song today. I'm going to knock out 3 songs today, whatever. And they're just like coming up with stuff like this and that. For me, now, mind you, like when I did Closer, I didn't really write it and I just kind of flowed and it came together very quickly. There's been a couple other songs that have been like that. But most of the songs that I write, it's like a whole process. It's like a whole journaling process, and I'm thinking about, you know, the lyrics is like, you know, it's like pieces of my life, and it's coming together a little slower. But I feel like sometimes they can be more poignant than me just talking and saying something as raw.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
It's like a whole different outlet that you
It is.
give yourself permission for, maybe.
Yeah,
Or
it's another side of you that comes out across.
yeah, or maybe there's like only a certain amount of words that can fit, so it's like sometimes you got to just get to the point. Or sometimes I'll kind of like just let my subconscious go, and then I'm saying certain things. I'm like, did I say that? Oh my God, it's gonna be so embarrassing when I perform it. But it's like vulnerable and freeing.
Right.
And it's been like, at first I felt like I had to write every lyric by myself. Now I've started to like open up to work with some songwriters sometimes, or collaborate sometimes. I even, you know, have worked with like Estelle before, and she writes. She's a dope writer.
I was listening to a lot of your catalog on the way over here just to prepare, and the themes are a lot of like spiritual themes, a lot of like romantic love songs that don't strike me as like the typical commercial, like thinking of love in a very deep and poetic way. That's what I observed.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my love songs are like most of the time like introspective, you know, and pensive, and it's kind of like there's this feeling, but there's also this feeling, and I feel it feels more real and authentic for me, as opposed to just like happy, optimistic love songs,
Yeah,
and everything's perfect,
yeah.
and I want you so bad, and
Right.
you're my whole world, and I can't live without you, and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, I feel like in a real relationship, there's more feelings
It's more complex than that.
than just that,
Yeah.
you know? And there's kind of like, you know, give me the reasons to choose you over and over, because it takes effort, and these are the reasons I don't want to let you go, but it feels more authentic as a woman than just like, there's something past just falling in love. Although, it would be great to write some songs that are more from that perspective, and that energy.
Yeah.
But I think for me, when I was thinking about being a songwriter, I was like, I want for the authenticity to be there, and I want for other people to relate. I don't want it to just be like fantastical.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that hearing that makes a lot more sense, knowing that you write your own lyrics yourself, so it's your voice, it's your words. But is that kind of rare for vocalists to write their own music?
I don't really know. I think there's a lot of singer-songwriters out there, but I used to assume every artist wrote all their stuff. And then I realized, oh, no, that's not true. You know what I mean? It's different for everybody, And then there's people like Victoria Monet, who was like started as a writer, you know what I mean? And she wrote like all these incredible songs for other people and then moving it into that space. And then there's some artists that are like incredible vocalists and they embody the song so much that you think they wrote it. Even like, Whitney Houston,
Exactly.
like she was like the most amazing voice ever.
Yeah.
I don't think she was actually songwriting, but it's like she conveyed such feelings. It's like I never even thought of that till years down the line looking at, liner notes.
Yeah.
So it's not for everyone. I don't think it's necessary for everyone. It's just kind of like, what are our natural gifts and comfort zone, I guess.
I think for
some we need to express.
Some of these like people you mentioned, like Whitney or like maybe Tina Turner would be another one. I think they also were intentional about who they chose to collaborate with.
Oh my gosh. They were not singing any old thing.
Yeah, they kept.
It was like
they kept writers around.
Yeah. And even like who Whitney used to collaborate with, I think I want to say Narada Michael Wald. It's a writer and producer from out here, from the Bay Area.
I think I heard that before.
Yeah. And so then there's like, people on your team like giving you these huge, amazing songs, and they're just like waiting for the right instrument. It's like, that was one of the gifts of Quincy Jones.
Exactly.
Too, of like having this huge vision. He didn't have to be the one singing it. He didn't even have to be the one penning it, but he had like the overall huge vision. And then it's like, what Michael Jackson's gonna bring to it, or Frank Sinatra, or like all these different people that he was working with. Then it's like the magic together. So I don't know. There's not just one recipe.
Yeah, no, again, this is like, there's so many things I could say of what I love about music, and there's no really wrong way to do it, right?
No, there's not.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you feel something and it could be like put together in the most janky way, but it's
still yours. It's still so it's authentic to you.
Yeah. And it just might resonate.
Hey, there's some janky people out there that might relate.
See,
to that.
I wasn't trying to say janky people. I just mean like,
I mean, you can feel janky, right? You might wake up one day like, damn, I gotta get my shit together. I'm feeling kind of janky right now.
No, that's true. But I just mean like, sometimes the magic isn't in like something being like so well produced and all the things that you would like expensive. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of just like, I don't know, it's in the ether, in the air, or whatever it is by any means necessary, with duct tape recorded in a closet,
Yeah, and I know we'll get to it, but I know you
Yeah.
have some experience with that type of recording
All of
environment.
it. All of it.
I did want to touch on your background because your parents have an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
So you're on your father's side South African
Mm-hmm.
and mother's side Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my father, he's no longer alive, but that whole side of the family is Black South Africans.
Right.
And my father left South Africa during the apartheid system, and had joined like a young militant group. Went to Kenya, met my mom, who's a German Jew that grew up in, was born in New York, but grew up in California. And like, she went to Kenya to as part of her college program, like where she was going to help with some kind of school or something. It didn't work out, but there was the synergy where her friends and my dad's friends, whatever it was, they met up and started a life together, and had me and my brother in the Bay, got married and had me and my brother in the Bay Area. And we're just both very community-minded people. And my father lived in exile for many years and couldn't go back to South Africa until the laws changed.
Wow.
And finally Mandela could be released from prison and elected, and South Africans had rights to vote. And, it would just like, so that was kind of a trip to witness that reality in a time where in the U.S., I'm a generation or so after the civil rights movement. And we know, injustice still exists, but my generation felt a lot more free than my parents, but that my parent and their parents, but to have that reality going on at the same time as a kid was really a trip. It's like my grandparents were like living, and my cousins were like living under curfew and stuff like that in Soweto, similarly to like how some folks in Gaza, are living under curfew even before this this war happened. There's just like super complex,
Very
and
complex.
A lot of disparity.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I remember as a kid, like the South African apartheid was like the issue of the time. It was one of the only times you've seen the whole world kind of line up and speak out.
Thankfully, and it took a long time for the world to line up on that.
And the story of Nelson Mandela and all that. And so that, I can imagine, is crazy. The whole world's tuning into this issue, but you're kind of living it through your dad.
And what's even more so, it was kind of like growing up knowing it's a reality, but it not being a huge, it wasn't really televised until later. You know what I mean? It was going on so long before it was like considered a world issue. I think
it took a lot of people to raise awareness.
And a lot of artists, like Miriam Makeba and Huma Sekela were doing songs about the realities, and they were just doing beautiful music, so it was resonating. But when they were talking about the realities of what was happening in South Africa, then they were living in exile, because it was kind of like certain stuff you just couldn't talk about creatively. Their music couldn't even be played in South Africa, which is like bizarre, right?
Yeah.
And they're these national treasures. But then, Lady Smith, Black Mambazo, and Paul Simon getting together, and Graceland being like such a huge album. That was in my childhood, probably came out when I was like 10 or something like that. that music was so huge. And then like Stevie Wonder, and all of these artists, I want to say like Public Enemy and different folks did this whole project that was about banning performing at Sun City. It was
Sun
like,
City, yeah.
you remember that?
Well,
You're a little younger.
I'm
but
younger, but I dug that record up just digging through vinyl.
Wow.
And it was produced by Lil Stevie Van Zandt, who was in Bruce Springsteen's band.
Look at you. Okay. Because it was only on vinyl. Like that's kind of a rare find.
Well, I was like, oh, what is Sun City? This is probably going to have some gems on it. And not really for like sampling. But then I've kind of saw like, oh.
It was a huge collaborative, like it had so many different artists, right?
It had like the biggest artists in the world.
That came together, and once again it was like through music, but they can kind of spread this political message of like why is it called Sun City? Why are people even talking about that? And then it was like, don't go to South Africa during this time and perform there because the apartheid's going on, and not everyone would even be allowed to buy tickets and come to the show. And, you're not thinking like that. I feel like at that time coming from here. So I think all those efforts lined up. And then even like we were talking before, like Danny Glover, working with my uncle Zakes Mokai, who's no longer alive, but they were doing plays like in theater also about what was going on in South Africa. And there was like Master Harold and the Boys. But anyways, there's all these different...
he talked about that on our podcast. Yeah.
Yes.
So just real quick side note, that Amiri Baraka, the poet, told him to start acting in theaters. And that's how he started acting, revolutionary theater.
It's amazing. And my uncle was one of his mentors.
Wow.
Zakes Mokai. And so as a kid, I grew up knowing like, oh, Danny Glover. And then, you see him later on in like all these huge movies. And I felt a connection to him because it was like he was down for South Africa early on.
Yeah.
He knew, my parents and used to like kick it with my dad and that community that was living in exile, those years ago. And there's like this history of art and activism and music that was able to kind of like further the message and get to people to where people are thinking about South Africa and apartheid and like, how can we change it?
And you mentioned a little bit too that like you got into like youth organizing and activism too.
I used to be part of this organization called EYES, Empowered Youth Educating Society. And my brother was in it first, and it was like youth activists, those people doing graffiti, aspiring underground hip hop artists, and a bunch of us that were like, I was in it when I was like 14, and it was like, I want to kick it. There's not a lot of all ages places to go. I mean, that was one of the things. It was like, it felt like community, and it was coming out of this summer camp. Forgetting the encampment. And they used to do these whole summer programs and youth trainings like over the summer. And so I think EYES formed after that as like, after, folks are coming from all over the country, what can you do locally to kind of keep the spirit of it and be involved in your community? And, but it's like, we'd kick it every Friday. We would meet. It would be, I feel like music and art inspired, but then like sometimes there'd be conferences that we'd speak at, or sometimes there would be something we'd rally around. Like there was like a youth curfew that was going to happen in Oakland. So it was like, how can we bring awareness to that? But anyways, I feel like I'm going off on a tangent, but okay.
Yeah.
That was kind of like, it was all kind of mixed together. I feel like when I was younger, and it was like fun. It wasn't like I was a I didn't feel like I'm a serious activist. It was just
Yeah.
kind of like I'm going to show up for things that I care for, but it's also community,
Yep.
and we're hanging out and we're standing together when things don't feel right.
I love it. I mean, because that's another thing about the Bay is that we all kind of grow up with that community mindedness. We understand the importance of community.
Yeah.
We understand that you have to speak out when the time is right.
Yeah.
We are always trying to be on the right side of history.
Yeah.
And people like point fingers about like progressive politics and all. And it's not about politics with
No.
us. It's about straight up like we need to support each other and do what's right. And there's so many artists and people that have got their starts through community education, community programs. So yeah,
Totally. And it's even like people fighting to keep arts in the schools, you
Yeah.
know, and keep like the first I went to Berkeley Arts Magnet, and you know, Carolyn Brandy taught samba there to a bunch of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and we actually sounded good. Do you know how hard that is?
Yeah.
You didn't have to audition to get in this. And she had us learning tambourine patterns and how to play, you know, drums and whatever. And to the point where, like, they let us, you know, and my brother was in it maybe like a couple years before me. They got to like open for Sheila E. We got to open for Pete Escovedo at La Pena. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So it's kind of like I feel like the teachers even out here,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, it takes
Oh,
a
yeah.
personal investment because teachers are not getting paid enough. But to like, there's an opportunity to show a bigger world. And I think also there's a lot of artists that will give back.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting just hearing all these little seeds that got planted to create the artists that we see today. I want to jump a little bit ahead because I know we're a little bit short on time today, but what was your first like venture into actually like recording and putting out music or being on songs?
My first, okay, let me think about it. There's my first recording or first performing, like
Recording
recording.
that came out.
Okay, I think there was a recording that didn't come out, like me singing at it.
Yeah,
You know when you could go in those fake studios at the
Like Fisherman's Wharf or something. Yeah.
and that was the first time. And it's like you put on the earphones and record a song, but you can't hear yourself.
Right.
Do you know how important it is to hear yourself? Like to sing in key. You know what I mean? And they let you like sing along with the artist and it sounds crazy. Okay, that's my first recording. But the first recording that people could like, you could dig and actually hear would probably be, there was this compilation out here. I'm trying to remember the name of the whole thing, but I did this song called Don't Explain, and it was like a female producer from here, Nilu, and it was like, oh my God, there was all these folks from the Bay Area, but I think it was like in efforts of like, you know, you have to write something uplifting. It's going to come to me. I can't believe I can't remember. I can't remember the details
Wow.
of it.
Okay,
But
somebody go look that up.
yeah, this is like before mix CDs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This was like a cassette tape right before CDs. And then there was like me singing, just like rocking over other people's instrumentals, like singing over a Noriega instrumental or something. And I think that made it into some like compilation magazine thing. So those were like the kind of things I was doing before I put out my first project.
Well,
And maybe even with like Souls and Hyro.
I was going to say, yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but like you kind of got your start in like underground hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
There's this funny thing about like back in the day, there's someone singing on the hook, like blowing. Like there'll be someone blowing.
Yes.
But their names.
Right? Oh my God, I just figured out that Charlie Wilson is singing on Computer Love.
Yeah.
And do you know that's been one of my favorite songs like since I was a little kid.
I found that out when I saw him live at Shoreline Amphitheater.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, of course that's Charlie Wilson.
And it was always like this familiar voice, right?
Yeah. But I'm thinking of like one of the big famous ones to me is like Thuggish Ruggish Bone.
Uh-huh. Who was
Tasha? She says her name at the end.
Yeah.
Like, we got Tasha.
Yeah.
I'm like, how did you not put her name?
Because they didn't know. And even like, you know, starting out, you might start out singing backgrounds. You might start like, what a roller coaster. Like this, I think music entertainment, like there's talent and all of that, but there's like also luck. There's like so many things that have to go right for more than just the immediate people around you to ever hear you.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Very well said. I mean, I think one of the groups, the hip hop groups that people associate you with is Zion I.
Mm-hmm.
Rest in peace, Zumbi.
Yeah.
That was my guy.
Yeah.
Great person.
Great person.
How did you link up with Zion I?
Okay, so when I used to perform locally, and I used to do like, I really started doing like a cappella music. I would just like sing a song on my own a cappella, and then I was like, you know, singing with other folks a cappella. And then I was like, then I started singing over instrumentals and like then grew to having a band and stuff. But I went away to Berklee College of Music in Boston for like, I was out there for like 2 years, and I was working on class assignments, but I knew I wanted to be a songwriter and I knew I wanted to have an album. So I was really starting to record my EP, even though they were really like starting as class assignments, that I was like turning in, like you only have to turn in like 16 bars, but I'm like, but I'm gonna record a song, you know, and started working with amazingly talented people out there. One of those folks was Jeff Basker, who's gone on to be like the top producer, like of all, you know, just amazing producer that's worked with, you know, Bruno Mars, you know, Beyonce, all these folks. But when I moved back here, I was like, who should I work with? And Zion I was like blowing up the scene out here. And I was always going to like La Pena and, you know, like different venues where there was a lot of underground music, and they were killing it. And I feel like maybe Martin Luther introduced me to them. You know what's weird? I don't know if he introduced me to them or if I met him in the studio working with them at the same time. It all kind of happened around the same time. But I met Amp Live that was producing all this stuff, and Steve, who went by Zumbi later, there, and we started recording stuff. And then Amp is actually the co-producer of Closer,
right?
Him and Mike Tiger. Then, you know, so that was like, it really, I felt like was just meant to be. And we did a lot of songs together. Like Zumbi was on my albums, I was on the Zion I albums, and just a good vibe. And I think they also brought some energy, even though they're very much associated with the Bay Area. they're from other places too. So it was like bringing.
From Amplifies from Texas, ain't it?
Yeah.
I forget where Steve's from.
Yeah, I think he grew up partly in the Bay Area, but
Yeah.
then there was also like a little bit of a Tribe Called Quest type of influence, and just like just really quality music. So anyways, they were in the extended music family. And definitely I was working with Souls and Hyro, and we were like exchanging creatively. Like A Plus would produce something and I would sing on a hook, and Pep Love and Casual would, be on a verse, and I would, do some other hook. And then we ended up doing distribution of that first album with our family label, Skyblaze.
Yeah, so you dropped on Hieroglyphics Imperium. Am I recalling that correctly?
Well, okay, so they have Hieroglyphics Imperium, and they were distributed through Red, and
Sony
so we were
Red.
doing all this music together, and me have like our family label Skyblaze kind of just formed out of necessity of like, how can I do the music that I want to do and look the way I want to look and not be convinced out of my dream, and not have to like sell the industry on who I am, and how to not be shelved, all this kind of stuff. It was kind of coming from like all these horror stories that I was hearing in the industry. And my team, it was just kind of like, if we create something and build an audience, then it's already a proven market, whether I fit into a genre or look the way that they think I'm supposed to look or whatever, right? So then hopefully they'll meet me where I'm at, and it's more empowering, and there's more leverage business-wise.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it started. And it started with like 1,000 CDs. That's what we can afford to do. Okay, we can afford to like, now people don't have to have CDs. You don't have to have a hard copy. You can
It was
just
expensive to
put
print
out
that stuff.
something,
Yeah.
right? And you can just put out stuff on social media and it might just catch. But when I was like first trying to put out music, like 25 years ago, it's like you had to have some kind of physical copy. And so it's going to be like whatever, $1, a couple dollars per unit just for that, besides whatever it costs to record it. So it's kind of like, okay, this is a victory that we can make 2,000, Okay, now we need some distribution so that we can like put in orders to do thousands. And it was kind of like selling out the trunk, like how Too Short and E40 were doing in the beginning, and selling CDs at shows like Let Us See started out doing, and Martin Luther. And I was seeing people like, there is something to this independent thing where even if you have limited resources, you can still build something. And we'd sell to consignment stores. We were like at whatever, Rasputin's and Amoeba, and they'd be like, okay, we'll take 2 CDs. All right, those sold. We'll take 10. Okay, we'll buy a box. And it was like, yay, they're buying 2 boxes of CDs. And finally it got to like 65,000 copies. We're ghetto gold. And so then it felt like a different position when I finally ended up partnering up with like Sony. It wasn't like just starting from nothing. It was starting from like, let's keep building.
Yeah, that was my one of my discoveries today that I was telling you about before we started, that you self-released your first album that had Closer on it, which is really rare for vocalists, singers, soul, right? We hear it, like you said, Too Short, 40 rappers, but you took that approach to your own music and just got it out there, and obviously it ended up paying off.
Yeah. But I have to say, I was watching Lettucey do that too, and
Okay.
she's from out here. She might not be born here, but we associate her with Bay Area pride, you know. And Martin Luther too. So they were doing it in the soul and R&B space and killing it with the live show.
Right.
So even like, okay, if radio isn't playing it or whatever, the live show is like building the audience. So the word, you know, was getting out there. And then, you know, my brother and my partner at the time, we were like, okay, we can really build something with all of our skills together. And then my brother was also part of a DJ crew, Local 1200.
Oh, okay.
DJ Namani. So then there was also like the record pools and then like, you know, DJ allies. So of course I thought other songs were going to catch on the radio of mine that didn't really, like Closer was like a B-side, but that was, I think, another magical, like, alignment and key element is that DJs were taking ownership and, you know, Mind Motion and Vaughn and even Personality Chewy and, you know, all these folks that there were so many folks. And even like across the country that spread.
That makes sense. Well, before we get a little deeper into Closer, and I know we gotta wrap up soon, but
I know I've been going on and on.
I gotta talk about this last part.
Yes.
One, I was discovering that the first video for Closer was directed by my boy Moon Cricket. That's a crazy discovery.
About him.
Shout out to my boy Moon Cricket.
Yes.
He's been doing his thing for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah. I had no idea. He never
goodness.
came around like talking about like, yeah, I directed that video.
Moon Cricket, Beto Lopez, like is his Clark Kent name. Yeah. He is a real superhero.
Right.
And he's crazy talented. And he first had approached me and Theo. I'm going to say again, like shout out to La Pena for whatever it was, the meeting ground for so many people. But he was filming some different stuff, I guess, of shows and approached me like, I want to do something for you. He was doing his own animation, like the claymation stuff. Like he was doing just wild stuff on his own, like with it. He was doing all the production. He was making it look crazy. He has so much footage that I just hope will get out there of like every documentary and every claymation, everything that he's done. But he also is a killer skater.
Yeah.
What is it? What kind of skating?
Rollerblading. Rollerblading.
Rollerblading.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the shots that ended up being in the video is like literally he is on a rollerblades, like with the camera, like there's no boom, there's no dolly, there's no none of that. He's just like, and he's just like a one-man, huge, talented, but he did that Closer video that now I think that's what keeps coming up and people are like, the first Black woman on doing a YouTube music video or something. Yeah. Because I think he uploaded it like all those years ago. But if I tell you how that came together, like if we had a behind the scenes, you would just be like, how on earth did this come together? But shout out to him for believing in it early on and making that happen, because we were just putting it together.
That blew my mind. Yeah, I just wanted to shout that out. And
yeah,
I know we gotta go. It's my last in closing. I just want to say that that song Closer is very dear to me.
Thank you.
And it came out when I was in high school, and when I was, to bring it all full circle, the healing energy of music. That song was all over the radio. It was a big, like you said, it had momentum. It had support from all the DJs. It had that Amp Live co-produced beat, so it had some knock. It was like pre-hyphy, but it still has some kind of like the drums is still kind of, you know. But
and then Mike put the keys, and
beautiful
he's just
keys,
phenomenal
beautiful
talent from out
harmonies,
here.
beautiful lyrics, and I just have this memory of like the most gangster dude in my high school. We were playing that in the gym, and he just like had these long braids, and he was like so at peace. And I just, every time I play that song, it gives me that same type of feeling, like, man, everything's gonna be all right, and I'm keep pursuing my dreams. And I would love to keep talking to you, but you gotta go. But it's beautiful.
Thank you for that.
It's beautiful to see that was your entry into believing yourself, putting that on your own, and all the places that's taking you. And still, more than 20 years later, we're still talking about that song. You're still doing amazing things. You're about to perform at the Valkyries home opener tonight.
I'm super excited about that. I feel like it's a special time in the Bay Area right now. I feel like we get these certain years of like creative magic on different levels, and now it's like in sports too, and like, the Warriors have been on fire for a long time. So that's like, I love that we're getting seen out there and known for different victories, and like just like can change some of the narrative, out of the Bay Area. But the Valkyries, there's already so much support, and it's just beginning. Like tonight's like the first home game, and there's already so many folks that have season tickets, and tonight's going to be the first time I'm ever witnessing a WNBA game.
Yes.
I've never been to one before, so it's new for me, but I'm one of the ambassadors, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited with how they're engaging the whole Bay Area, and just different representatives, so that we can all have like ownership of this moment. And I'm also excited about like even like what's happening in film and TV from the Bay Area.
Oh yeah.
Ryan Coogler's from here, and they're like has put out so many amazing projects now. Shanaka Hodge, who's a writer, is about to put out I think Ironheart or something, through that production house. I got to be part of this documentary about Oakland High, called Homeroom, and me and Rex Life Raj, did the theme song on that. And there's just like all these different I don't know, wins and like little.
There's a lot of cool stuff happening.
Illuminations happening from the Bay Area. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing some of that here on this platform.
Thank you.
I would love to do this again and talk.
I would love to too. And I want for folks to know that there's 7 albums out there. I feel like a lot of times, people go back to the first one, and that's like one of the things with doing music independently, you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff under the radar, but please check out Colors. That's the latest album I put out, and I'm putting out new music soon, and just did a song on Pilo's compilation.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that too. I heard it. Great song.
A song with Kari, and me and Pilo have been talking about working together for years, so I'm glad we finally, got a little something together. I feel like I've got to work with so many Bay Area artists that it's like I'm happy when it, I get to do all that.
Well, next time we'll dive deeper. I wanted to go into the full discography, but we got the beginnings.
Yes.
So,
thank you so much for having me, and thank you for doing this and just highlighting different parts of the Bay Area. There's a lot of layers out here.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you, the viewer. Thank you to everybody at the team. Shout out my man Kamel in the building. And we out of here, y'all. Goapele. Peace.
Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California is a West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay. Recognize where you got the game. We got our own style, got our own slang. Northern California West Coast thing. This is the history of the Bay.